Hi, this is MykonosFan, and welcome to the July 2023 Q&A happening in mid-August, but there's a reason for it. As we'll get into today, most of the questions are about the charity room, and I figured, well, let's let the actual charity room event finish, and then I'll get here and answer these, okay? So usually these are end of month, every 2 months, but this time we're going a little later. If you want me to answer your questions in video form, come by the Patreon, throw a buck my way, get into the Discord. There's a questions seeking answers channel. Just pop it in there. I'll collect it and they will show up here. Or if you don't want to give me money, just comment below. If it's a good question, there's a pretty good chance I'll just use it. So, ahem. The first question today comes from AE Double. It's a great question about seafood. I live far from the coast, so I don't have any seafood preferences. I don't know anything about it being prepared any fancy or special ways. So alas, even seafood paella, which is probably a very simple thing. I have no shame in coming here and showing my ignorance and lack of knowledge on that subject. I like fried things. As an American, fish sure does get fried around here. How about that? That's a bad answer. AEW also asks, short and long games have their pros and cons. Which do you feel you prefer more? It's a good question because there's nothing like when I'm able to get absorbed into a game and it kind of just becomes my life for like a week or two. And I just forget about the rest of the world, and the whole time I'm like, I shouldn't be this deep in, but I'm just lost in the throes of fixation and the game just washing over me and taking over my entire life. And it feels kind of good deep down to just lose myself to that. But it's hard for a game to do that to me these days. When a new Yakuza game comes out, a new Like a Dragon, right? It tends to happen with that. It didn't quite happen for me this year with Ishin. It did eventually, but it didn't quite happen then. But for the most part, those tend to do it, right? And those are some of my favorite gaming times of the year when that happens. But shorter games that I feel like I can actually reliably get through and not worry about something coming up halfway through and me dropping it and never getting back around to it, or just keeping my attention span reasonable, right? Where I won't just wake up one day and not feel like doing it anymore, as I'm prone to do. So, I'd say I'd lean towards shorter games, like 15 hours or under these days. When a longer game can get me, that's great. But I think of something like Horizon Forbidden West, which I started, I put maybe 5 to 10 hours into it, was enjoying it quite a bit. And just one day I woke up and I didn't really want to play it anymore. It just wasn't like what I was drawn to do that day. And I haven't been back to it since. So I guess I'd say shorter games, but I appreciate long games. Our next question, and this is where we get to the charity room questions. So I just went into my Discord server a while back and was like, I just feel like talking about the charity room stuff, because we'll talk about it a little bit as we're on air sometimes, but we don't often actually just come out and talk about any of the behind the scenes stuff or preparations or anything like that with a charity room. So I was just like, screw it. I'll dish the deets. I'll do it. Ask me anything. And we got some questions. So from Golden's question is, barring odd last minute hiccups, how far ahead of time do you usually have the TCR schedules done? This is a good question. Because I will see people assume that you're going to hear a lot of me clicking here as I go through like our docs and stuff. We see a lot of people just kind of assume that we do them like a few months before release, which is like probably a reasonable expectation if you're not familiar with this stuff, right? I'd say usually the way a charity room thing will go is we will do the event. We'll all say, good job, we're exhausted, I never want to think about this again. Let's come back in like 2 to 4 weeks and have a debrief meeting. Go over what worked, what didn't. We send out audience surveys. recently in recent years, which is just kind of like, hey, what'd you think of this? What'd you think of that? Did we do better than last year? How can we do better next year? Stuff like that. So we'll gather that into usable, actionable data and feedback for us. And by then, we tend to have an idea of what we're doing the next year. Sometimes we know before the event's even finished. We've kind of just been like, oh, we should do this next year, right? So we're able to announce next year's event. Sometimes you get an event like this year where we're just kind of looking at next year like, might go a little differently next year. We might do some things differently next year. We're not quite sure. We'll talk about it more at the debrief. But, you know, assuming a usual year where we know the theme the following year, right? That is when we start to put together, what do we want to do? What are the games we want to do? What are the things we want to hit? Who knows how long their games will take if they do it, their challenges, stuff like that. And from there, you know, considering that's usually around like what, late August, September. From there, we generally have our schedule mostly locked in by like January. If I'm remembering correctly, it's usually by like January or February. It's mostly locked in, and everything from there is just checking in every month or so and being like, hey, is this still good for everyone? Can you still make this day? Is this runtime still accurate? Do we need to make some things longer or shorter? And stuff like that. Like even looking at our 2023 event planning sheet, which was, you know, planning charity versus Rune 2. Can I see an edit history on this page? That'd be really helpful for this question, actually. This would have been a good thing to look at. I don't think I can on Google Sheets. Sorry, Google Docs. If there's a way, it's too late. You're watching the video and I can't find out. But I'm looking at this and we have it split up into different categories, right? Here's the good job stuff, the improvement stuff, things to consider, start times for our discussion. Then I have some run ideas, right? The first one here, Sonic Origins story mode race, David versus someone. That happened. Get a 3-person overlay for any 3-person races. We had some of that. Jeopardy's on here. A very unfortunate thing that fell through that we might bring back some other time, so I won't say it. Smash with Linky and Justin. Discussion about the versus team here, WWE 2K, right? And then if I go down, we did come back eventually and start adding in some solid ideas. Like, oh, we should get an Ape Escape race with like Ant Dude and some of the guys, which was going to happen but fell through, right? Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, Bid War, a Spyro 2 race, Kirby Superstar Ultra Meta Nightmare, Sonic Origins Story Mode, Sly Cooper 1 race with Elliot and Kevin, a Sonic Frontiers race. Whew, don't talk to me about that one. And I'm just looking down here and saying, oh man, most of this made it in, you know? And this was a lot of stuff that we figured out pretty early. Like we went through and highlighted like, oh, what are we dead set on doing? What are we, what would we like to do, but won't, you know, be too upset if we can't do it. And then just like I threw this idea out just because we need to throw ideas out, which are some of my favorites sometimes, just because they're always a little like, in context at the time, we had a Donkey Kong Country Returns versus Tropical Freeze thing, which makes sense. And then like a ukulele and Impossible Lair thing, but those ideas never really got fleshed out, right? So stuff like that. Jeopardy, Family Feud, another great Sonic debate, but with people who don't like Sonic. Stuff like that. So yeah, to actually just like simply answer once again and repeat myself, like it usually by the start of the new year, we've pretty much figured out most of what we're going to do, and even by like spring we've pretty much already sorted it out in a Google Doc or a Google Sheet. I got it mixed up the other way that time, and we just have a full-on schedule we can look at and readjust as we need with our names, the runners, the estimated time, and basically a rough schedule for each day of the event. Very handy, very handy. Okay, I had to make sure I was recording. Those last minute hiccups though, they really can throw a wrench in things. Like the night before the start of the event, we had to reshuffle and basically kill Ape Escape. So hopefully someday we can get that to go again. But that is just the kind of thing where no matter how much you plan for this type of thing, and we do plan early just to try to make sure things go as smoothly as possible when the event actually happens, you never know what'll happen. There's always something. So Harry asks, what has been the most satisfying moment for you doing the charity room? this is a difficult question because the immediate obvious answer is, oh, raising money for the causes we selected. That's a pretty fulfilling one. But I was thinking about this over the last few weeks. Like, is there a singular most satisfying moment, right? Is there one I look at that I'm like, yeah, that's it? And I don't think I have one. I think for me, the most satisfying or maybe gratifying moments are either A, when we're doing a really stupid bit on stream and people actually like it, like the stupid fucking Duke Nukem voices from this year, or it's like, oh, people like Duke Nukem. Okay, good. Here, let's talk about Mr. Goodbars for 45 minutes. That didn't happen, but it could have. I like Mr. Goodbars. It's stuff like that where we just go out on a limb and go, oh, there's a dumb fucking impression we've been doing in our spare time. Okay, people like it, cool. It's that or getting the weird chemistry blends over time with people who otherwise may not ever interact much with content stuff, right? But then we get to just put them together on the charity room and it works out, and it's cool for like viewers of either content person, right? I've always liked the kind of melding pot of personalities on the charity room, and one we can hopefully expand more, right? Like we got Salty DK Dan this year, which was a new thing for us, but that was a cool thing to reach out to him. We were going to have some more people come in, fell through. Stuff like that is what I want to maybe see more of down the road, with just like pushing the idea of like what you can expect from the charity room, whether it be like the people we have on or the things we do, or even just the format entirely. Taking some of those risks and actually seeing them work can be very satisfying. And I can only speak for me personally, because this isn't something I've really discussed with more than like a couple people outside of the group so far, since we're in kind of a break period right now. But like for me, the most satisfying moment I will have is if we can do something weird and different with a charity room sometime and have it air quote work, right? Like our donation total doesn't suffer to such an extent that we look at it and go like, oh God, we shouldn't have done this. But it's something where people will watch it and be like, that wasn't what I expected, but that was a lot of fun, right? I remember some hesitation with the Versus theme even from viewers at first, but I think once they watched it, like especially when the runs where it really worked, it was satisfying to see that be a thing and people be like, oh, that's fun. Like the video during Smash where I got the shit beat out of me and then Justin took my place and just wiped the floor with everyone. That was a very satisfying moment also, of just like, we're gonna basically air a wrestling promo during this stream and just go really stupid with it. Of course, it's obviously pre-recorded, but just seeing like everyone in the Twitch chat just go, oh my God, what the fuck is happening? That was a really good moment. It's that kind of stuff that I'd like to push for and explore more in these kind of events. And as much as I love the traditional, here is a game marathon, we are marathoning games and we are playing games, I'd love to push the boundaries of that some more and have it be weird and have some strange things happen now and then like that's unexpected but gets people really excited, right? Like it's always fun to do these things, but I want to see what else we can really make it do. So one of those answers is my most satisfying moment, aside from raising money for the causes, right? It's like I guess the production angle is maybe the way I can put it, where either my planning or the group's planning or someone else's planning entirely has paid off and achieved the objective. The Crazy Even asks, what was the mindset y'all had going from the very first charity room to Platform Mania? That's a good question, because in the first place, the mindset seemed to be, we just want to do a charity event our way, and we're going to do that, and we're going to call it Fund the Charity Room. And that was where I entered any of this, so I don't know anything about what happened before that. That's just me bluntly speaking about why Fund the Charity Room obviously existed at the time, right? That's just, it is what it is. I don't know. I just joined in because FTCR people got to be more involved from that point on, and I was like, all right, well, I won't just sneak in Gary's basement during some of these things. Now I'll just actually help plan them. And our first one sure was an event. We have a link on our website. Does it still work? Yeah. Fund the charity room. We were benefiting the Dreamscape Foundation. We had a $15,000 goal and we hit $7,782. And I think our mindset, it literally was just, let's just do an event. Let's just put it on. Let's just do what we usually do, but just play the games we want to play, right? Everyone just does whatever they want to do. We'll stream at 4 or 5 a.m. if we want. My God, if we're not online, that's donations we could be not getting. You know, it was a real, how would you put it? It was a real just fucking loosey-goosey nonsense, anything goes kind of thing. Which was a lot of fun, right? Obviously, we had fun doing it. But I was looking back with Kevin a few days ago, just looking through each year and like what happened each year, and it's like I just look at the charity room, the Fund the Charity Room 2016, and I'm like, I don't even recognize who were these people? What are these playthroughs? What were we doing? I did Yakuza 5 for 47 minutes because we needed filler. What? Why? You know, I look through, it's like, oh, I did do a Parappa the Rapper 2 run. That's weird. Why did I do that? Huh. So, you know, it was an event that we had fun with, but I think very quickly learned a lot with. You know, this far removed, it's a lot easier for me to forget a lot about a lot of things that probably happened, like a lot of technical issues, probably a lot of scheduling issues, probably a lot of like, we were supposed to be live 20 minutes ago, why is no one live right now, kind of stuff, right? I'm sure on the viewer end, it was quite a different experience. But it was basically, we wanted to step out on our own. Platform Mania was the next one and was our most successful for a time. And with that one, I think it was just looking internally and looking at us as a group and being like, what are we best at? You know, what are we known for by our viewers? What can we like kind of focus in on so this isn't like BioShock and Parappa the Rapper and Yakuza and Sonic Blast and you know, whatever fucking spaghetti we can throw at the wall, right? So I think the cohesive theme helped a lot. I think we were able to quickly look and see a lot of things that did work, a lot of things that didn't work. We were a little more ambitious with stuff like, oh, let's reach out to get Mike Pollock on for Sonic Lego Dimensions, right? There's a Sparrow Enter the Dragonfly speedrun on here, and just kind of focusing in on platformers, which, you know, we all like a variety of games, right? But I think if you look at our group, most of what you would associate with a lot of them with is platformers. So it just made a lot of sense. Steven's Sonic Mania parody trailer was like incredibly good, B, well timed as something that just kind of, you know, resonated with people because people were so excited for Sonic Mania, and then, oh, here's this pitch perfect Platform Mania trailer. I think it just worked a lot better in terms of communicating to the audience what we're doing, because we actually knew what we were doing. It happened to go hand in hand of like, oh, we actually put more thought into this time, and I think it clearly showed. And even so, like, we're 6 years out from Platform Mania, and I look at it, it's like, man, I don't remember any of this shit. I played Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Huh. That's 8.5 hours I barely remember. I think you showed up during this, Seven. I think you showed up during that stream. You just showed up to Garrett's house and was like, oh, hey, it's the Crazy Even. But, you know, I don't remember a lot of this. So, yeah. That's a very meandering way to get to the answer to that. And I think from there, I wouldn't say we necessarily learned everything we needed to learn to get us to where we are now in terms of like operating very smoothly, putting a lot of thought and like self-critique into like a theme. You know, what are the pros? What are the cons of something like a License to Chill, which has standout awesome games, of course, people would want to see us play because they're either amazing or terrible. But then there's like this gulf in the middle of like, oh, this isn't incredibly funny or entertaining or good as a video game, right? And then therefore it's harder to take that and run with it as a streamer, especially for charity and with so many people involved and all this stuff going on. So that's one where like the theme is solid, but the game selection maybe wasn't there as much, right? And what did we do after License to Chill? Was that subpar Smash Brothers? Yes. Okay. Yeah. And that's one again, right? People were excited and hyped up on Smash Brothers, right? And it was very easy to be like, oh, it's subpar Smash Brothers. We're playing a game from every character represented in Smash on stream. And I think that made sense to people and they kind of got it and understood it, you know? And Super Mario Oddities, you know, it's Mario. That would make sense. So yeah, that's just one of those things where I think we improved on theming and maybe branding and getting the idea across. And I'm going to go to the next question because I'll say everything again. All right, last question here, which actually ties into what I was just saying. Good thing I cut myself off. Goldstorm07 asks, how important do you and the others think having a theme for the charity event in the first place is? It's been an unspoken rule to have everything tie into a specific series, genre, or concept ever since this whole thing got started with Hellfire Commentaries' Zelda-thon almost 10 years ago now. But Fund the Charity Room being pretty much an entirely unthemed has made me wonder for a while whether having a gimmick is particularly impactful, especially since many if not most of the viewers are being drawn by the more high-profile participants that alert them to it taking place. It's a great question. It's one we've had to grapple with, some here and there too. We have a survey running right now that I mentioned. Let me go in there right now because I'm curious about something. 62 responses so far. Okay. So if I look at our 62 responses, we have data from last year, which I think had over 100 people respond, right? Once we start getting the VODs up, I'm going to push this more on like the community page on the charity room and get some more answers. But looking at our sample size here of 62, which isn't a lot, but a majority of the people said that they most wanted to watch because of the runner, not even necessarily the game. The game is 32.3% of this pie chart. So right there is basically a large majority of it. So it's either the game or the runner itself. And then if you go into questions about the theme, a lot of people liked it. Some people are like, maybe don't do it again, right? Maybe 3 years in a row, it'll get a little stale. So it's an interesting question because I feel like both answers are true. I feel like you don't need to theme it, or you don't need to like as strictly theme it, let's say. But the clout of the runners and the high profile participants and the big names and those of us who are, you know, like in tune with our audiences that are smaller, but like we connect with them still and they're likely to show up for us, right? Like me, I don't have a big audience, but thankfully a lot of people pay attention when I say things or point people to things, right? So that helps a lot. But on the other hand, you know, like a theme can really help get people interested in who maybe don't care about anyone involved, right? Like a Super Mario Oddities where we're doing all the Mario games. That lets a Mario fan know, hey, I might want to tune in. I don't know who any of these people are, but I like Mario and that's a lot of Mario. Let's go watch Mario, you know? So it's an interesting question. It's one we've like grappled with, obviously. I think Fund the Charity Room being entirely unthemed, plus, you know, let's be honest, Fund the Charity Room, bad name. The Charity Room, still a bad name, but Fund the Charity Room is like, oh, you're funding us. It's like, well, no, wait, hold on. No, you're not funding us. So that probably didn't help it at the time. It wasn't very clear, I think, back then that we were raising money for charity if you were from the outside looking in. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think at a point it really is just you don't want the theme to be non-existent. You know, even with charity versus room, like there's not much of a theme. You know, it's themed around Marvel versus Capcom technically just because we like the aesthetic and Steven did an incredible job at replicating it, you know. But if you look at it, that's not really a theme, and we played Marvel vs. Capcom last year and none this year. You know, it's not a Marvel vs. Capcom event. It's an us versus us event, by and large. And I think it's a thing we've tried to do where we've kind of been like, well, what if we kind of focused on the people who are coming here for us and just focused more on having fun and challenging each other to do things or self-imposed things or, you know, fitting in the occasional oddity here and there, like a town with no name, right? And it seems to have worked. Like this year, maybe you look at the money and it's like, oh, it wasn't as much as last year's, but last year's was our highest ever. And like the economy is screwed right now. So that's also kind of part of it too, right? And I think what it's shown me is that people will come to this for us. And as long as we are entertaining and putting on a cohesive event with minimal road bumps, we can expect a certain level of support, which is great. Because pragmatically, I have to say, we're trying to extract money from you people. It's for charity. That's the idea. You know, we have to think about like maximizing donation potential and stuff like that, just because it is what we're doing, right? And you know, we have to also think about like what would not get us a lot of donations, you know, like how much, what is the donation total for the event that's worth the amount of time we put in planning the event, which across all of us is hundreds of hours collectively put in, you know. So that is just a good consideration. And that's why we'll probably always have a very loose theme at the very least. But you probably will see us kind of pendulum swing back and forth between like, here's a structured theme. Here's an event where the theme is looser, but it's about us, you know. And I think that we'll find success and just kind of going back and forth between those for a while if we stick to our usual kind of setup. What I would express here is my biggest fear is that at some point this runs its course and we come back and do our usual thing and it's just not entertaining anymore. You know, it's just like, oh, they did another one. Right. That's kind of where I come from a little bit with the wanting to surprise people thing, is because I want people to come back each year and their takeaway being like, oh, you know, something new happened, something weird happened, something crazy happened, something I didn't expect happened, right? I don't want it to be like the same exact thing as the last year or the year before or the year before or the year before. The fucking last thing I ever want to emotionally see is people being like, oh man, 2017's was so much better, they really fell off in 2024, or you know, I want nostalgia for the old events, but I don't want it to be like, oh, you guys are doing worse than you used to, you're doing the same thing but worse. That's like, oh no, wait, no. That's not what I want. So it's a consideration, and that's why, you know, you might see us try some weird things, maybe you won't, and we'll just keep doing things, or we'll take breaks more often, you know, just to keep it from getting stale and draining on us, and then stale and draining on you, right? Maybe we'll do some things where it's like, oh, there's only some small events this year, or maybe there's no event this year. Like in 2018 just had Sonic Zeros, yeah, which was just one race. You know, maybe something like that happens again, just to kind of keep it fresh. But, you know, what I would say is, this is a general statement, not necessarily just about the question, but we do put a lot of thought into the viewer experience and what will excite a viewer, what will bore a viewer, what will people show up for and not show up for. And the number one objective, at least for me, is to entertain, to make a frictionless, smooth, memorable event filled with just enough stupid bullshit like Duke Nukem that people will laugh, and, you know, it'll help them forget about whatever fucking day they just had for a bit, right? But also like that kind of random deep discussion that happens, like with a Bayonetta 2 stream, where it's like, oh, you know, the people I like are on the stream together and are talking about things they maybe otherwise wouldn't talk about or ever get to talk about, or at least not ever talk about with each other, right? I like the balance of both of those things, and I like when it happens organically. So it's a weird thing where it's like, I need these things to happen personally for me to be satisfied, but you can't force it, because the second you start forcing that stuff is when it gets bad. Like if we came back and it's like, hey, it's Watto 2, hey, Watto Junior, they're doing this whole event, you know, it just kind of happens, and that would suck. You know, something like Duke Nukem, like, yeah, some of us do a Duke Nukem voice sometimes for fun, but it happening and people laughing at it was a very organic, like, oh wait, hold on, okay, well, let's see where this can go kind of thing. Did it go too far? Probably. We'll see next year. Maybe it'll be Bernie Sanders. He came out a little this year. But yeah, that's the charity room. I'm kind of going off randomly on tangents now, unrelated to the questions, just because, you know, not often a chance to talk about this stuff, not often a good avenue or timing or venue for it. So we're here. Very happy with this year's event. If there was one I could redo, it would probably be this one. I feel like every other event happened exactly the way it needed to happen for us to learn something. But with this one, I was looking at it along the way, like, people involved, we just don't have the time or energy or emotional bandwidth or anything to like get this up to the next level it needs to be at. Like, what we have is good, it's great. I see a world where Charity versus Room 2 like is a completely sock-knocking experience. So if we ever come back around for Charity versus Room 3, I'd like to push harder for some things to go the extra mile with that one. That would be like a big personal goal. But the sky's the limit, you know? Maybe we do a mini event. Maybe we look backwards and it's like, oh, you know, let's just do Platformania 2. Fuck it. Why not? 2026 is going to be the 10-year anniversary of Fund the Charity Room / the Charity Room. That's a consideration. We haven't thought about that much yet, besides going, oh God, that's happening. But it'll happen and it'll sneak up. So we'll have to see. Sky's the limit, though. I'm excited to do more stupid things on the internet to raise money for charity. So as much as I'm enjoying my actual break from actually thinking about this stuff, it's nice to kind of look back at what's happened so far and where it could go in the future. I think we're close to $200,000 raised in total. I think we were at 180,000 give or take total, which is an insane number to think about. So if you do tune in, if you retweet, if you donate, if you have positive feelings about it, thank you. I hope to continue making it something to look forward to in the future. I don't ever want it to be a thing where it's like, oh God, it's boring. You know, at that point, I'd hope we just kill it. So yes, the charity room. Thank you. Next month will be MykonosFan centric, but this month we went for the charity room. That's all I got. Those are all the questions. They're all good ones. Thank you for sending them in. You have questions about me, or hell, you know what? If you have another charity room question, I'll probably take it next time if it's a good one. If you're still curious about something or something got raised from this that you're curious about, throw it out there. I'll either answer you through text or throw it in the next one. All right. Have a good one. How long did this go? Oh God, 30 minutes? All right, bye. I'm going. Goodbye.